So the last is how to run a process. And Demont really is deep in this all the time. So what does a typical fundraising process look like for founders? How many investors would any given founder need to talk to close their round?
Yeah. I think when founders hear what a standard process looks like, and then when they actually experience the actual process, it can be a bit daunting. But in general, we see a successful fundraise has a founder talk to, looking at, let's say at the top of the funnel, 150 or so VCs. And we talked earlier about
Targets,
prospects, if you will, for in a sales process. And we talked earlier about how to tell if they are a good target for you. And so then whittling that list down a bit. But then ultimately,
these are qualified targets, though. You're saying 150 qualified targets, not just dumping a database and saying, I have 500 VCs, I'm ready to go.
Sure.
You have to qualify the 150 most targeted to your business. They're not investors in Common Headspace or
That's right.
a competitor, or they do consumer, not just enterprise. Right? You're not just randomly dumping a Crunchbase scrape into your funding funnel.
Yeah. And we generally recommend our company starting with starting with Silicon Valley investors or kind of the top investors in kind of the major geos. Those are the folks that have the most experience growing these companies, are the ones that are going to be most helpful. So again, when you're talking about that 150, the ones that you've qualified, those are the sort of folks that we push our portfolio to.
We like to think that we've picked great portfolio companies and we want them to get the top 10% of investors.
Right.
Anything wrong with getting the mid-tier?
I mean, it's there can be, if you can get the money, it usually works. It can work out okay. As a founder, you may not get as much help. You may not have as many intros. You may not get the next round may not be as easy as getting a brand name.
Right.
But oftentimes when you go to that mid-tier or lower, you often get jerked around a lot in the fundraising process itself. So
got it. Less professionalism.
Yes. Just people that, get a little too excited, promise a little too much, and then ultimately can't deliver on those promises.
So maybe they're the bottom third, and then the mid-tier maybe behaves a little bit better, and the top tier, paradoxically, you think the top tier would be the most
buttoned up.
Yeah. You might even think that they would be more complicated, but they turn out to be less.
Yeah. In general, they have a process. They've done this a lot of times. They understand that a founder today could be very different from a founder, a year from now. They've seen many mistakes happen and misses happen. And so they're trying to make sure that every interaction that they have is a positive one.
150 at the top of the funnel. Where do we go next?
So next, we would try to get intros into probably around 100 to 125 of those folks. Yeah. You want to try to stack those together as much as possible. And then from intros, we typically see founders doing about 75 meetings. So whether that's in person or initial phone calls.
Right.
From there, kind of whittles down to kind of second meetings. Ultimately, you hope to go into diligence with around 10 firms. And then through diligence, we still see a drop off. And typically we'll see, 3 of those firms ultimately participating in the round.
So you're talking about 2%, 1 or 2% of the people you actually have a conversation with will participate.
Yeah. And that can be frustrating for a founder, especially as we see them go through.
Sounds like a full-time job.
Yeah.
And that's what you always say. It's a full-time job.
Yeah. It's the time where you have to delegate. You have to get out of the day-to-day business of your business, and you have to focus on fundraising.
Wow.
It's also why we recommend that you, in the round that you're in, you raise enough money to cover at least 18 months of runway. So you don't have to turn around and do this again. It's rough.
Yeah.
It is so weird that people raise enough money to go for 6 months or 9 months. Why not raise 18 months of runway, have a great plan to get you to those milestones, and have a plan B and a plan C if you don't hit those, right?
That's because people don't have a plan B and a plan C. They have I'm going to the top name venture firm and I'm just going to get $5 million or $10 million.
What I will say is amazing is that I think the companies in our accelerator tend to get 2 out of 3 meetings they try to get. What would a non-launch accelerator, non-Y Combinator company, what would their hit rate be on email intro to actual meeting?
Yeah. I mean, the reason our companies have a much higher conversion on email to a meeting is the quality of the intro. So it really has a lot to do with that. And obviously, because of your background and success rate, an intro from you is well respected. And so thus we have a higher conversion rate. And so when it's a lower quality intro or a cold email, those percentages can be 10%, 5% or so
Right.
on the conversion.
So somebody listening to this in Boise, Idaho, their startup's doing $1 million. They come to Silicon Valley after emailing 150 people that they pre-qualified.
Yep.
They might only get 5, 10, 15 meetings.
Yep.
So you got to be super realistic. And this is where the validation that a Y Combinator, Techstars, or Launch Accelerator actually matters, not to toot our own horn, but if you find yourself getting less than 10%, intro to meeting, you might need better intros.
Yeah. And an accelerator, or again, not to our own horn, it's a hack. It's a shortcut hack to get to where you ultimately want to go faster. And you have to trade some equity for that, but most founders don't regret that.
Yeah,
path.
it's sort of like these. You get into Stanford or Harvard, it's the same hack.
Yeah, exactly.
People will just automatically assume if you got into Harvard or Yale, you had to be smart. You had to struggle to get in there. Little do they know, you just photoshopped your picture onto a lacrosse player and your parents gave somebody $400,000 to their nonprofit. It's not fair. All right, listen, this has been a great episode. We went a little bit long, but this is the first of 10. If you want to get the deck that we went here, and we're going to have some links in there to it, go to thisweekinstartups.com/scale. This will get you the deck for all 10 of the episodes we're doing, all 10 of the videos, and links to backup material, because we may have mentioned some backup material like a safe. We might link out to the safe document, or if we mention a founder who's been on the podcast, we might link out to a podcast or a blog post. Thank you, Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie, our managing director of education. She'll be on one of the upcoming episodes. Thank you, managing director Ashley from the Syndicate, and managing director Jason DeMont from the Launch Accelerator. We will see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.